Call the meeting to order. Nadia, would you call the roll, please?
Yep. Anshout,
Here.
Travis Oakley,
Here.
Raymond Layton, Don Black,
Here.
Margie Dunn,
Here.
Marcus Simmons,
Here.
Pat Darcy,
Here.
Sonny Aluzo.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item under new business is a work session with Moffatt and Nichols to kick off the City of Newburn Land Use Plan update. I'm going to turn it over to Moffatt and Nichols.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. Am I still coming through well?
Yes, sir.
Terrific. Terrific. Well, good to speak with you all virtually, and apologies that I am not here in person today, but we'll certainly make amends, and I'll look forward to being personally in attendance in your next upcoming PZB meeting. But this is an exciting project, one that is going to move at a brisk clip. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to put some slides and share a very brief PowerPoint presentation with you, no more than 10 slides. But really the goal and objective today is to, number one, introduce myself and talk a little bit about our team and what we're excited to be doing for your community. Number two, talk about the process moving forward and the calendar or the schedule that we're working from. And talk a little bit about the data that we've received so far, that we've reviewed so far. We like to think we know your community well. Members of Moffatt and Nichol have been working on the resiliency planning now for a bit of time. We also just helped you get a nice big grant to help out on some work in Duffy Field. So we're happy to continue to be a part of your community. And then I've got a couple of questions. No heavy lifting today, but do want to really spend more time listening than speaking, and hear a bit about the types of folks and groups that we should be meeting with and talking with as we move through this process, some of the issues and opportunities in the community, and ultimately, this is an effort that will be very focused on key areas of growth. We're not going to, build the ark and prepare for 40 days and nights of water, but we are going to be focused on very strategic zones in your land use plan update, so that we can be ready for the next couple of years, moving to 10 years into the future. So that's the overview. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to share my screen, and let's make sure I get this correct, because sometimes I share the wrong screen. I got lots of them. And I'm going to open that presentation, and I'm going to hit that. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Great. And of course, if any time I'm not coming through clearly or you need to pause, this is a, Madam Chairman, I know you'll be helping encourage your board members and folks to speak and participate, but clearly, if we need to pause at any moment, let me know. So with that, I think I just covered our agenda, but just to kind of recap it, to go through the project, to talk a little about the data.
Recording in progress.
And ultimately talk about the next steps of how we move forward. So we were retained by the team and really got going in the new year. We had a kickoff meeting on January 20th. You've had a couple of staff changes since then, so we have one on our end. So we had a little bit of a pause, but we have been working to collect data and certainly get things going. I'm your project manager. I've been a planner for about 24 years. I'm based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Moffatt and Nichol is a company with 859 employees was the last number I saw. We have almost 100 of those employees based here in North Carolina, in Wilmington, Raleigh, and here in my studio in Charlotte. I will be your project manager, your point of contact. You can, at the end of the presentation, my cell phone, my email address will all be displayed, but feel free to contact me at any time. And I'll be backed up with, besides myself, a really great planner here, Amanda Zullo, who's also been working on all your public outreach for the resiliency plan and work that's been done. Stephen Romanen, who is a planner here in our office, as well as our GIS team and resources that we have based in Raleigh. And really the objective is to, of course, update your land use plan. And as I mentioned, we want to focus on those key areas that we're requiring an update that are certainly to meet the requirements of NC General statutes and to get this done by the end of January, the end of June, excuse me, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And certainly to make sure we're very focused on those key areas of concern that need to look in terms of the suitability of land use, the suitability of infrastructure that's out there, how we can make sort of transportation, infrastructure, and land use all work together. In an ideal world, they're all kind of organized and planned and orchestrated in a very concurrent way. And we want, to the best of our ability, to embody that in your land use plan update as well. We're going to work across three primary stages of work. And of course, as you can expect, we're right here in the heart of stage one, data collection, engagement with the PZB, and this isn't a one-off. We'll certainly have multiple opportunities to meet with you and to spend time with each one of you and to certainly have your fingerprints on this document. As I mentioned, we had a kickoff meeting with the town that included folks from the Economic Development Office, from GIS, from Public Works, Jordan, your city engineer. And now we're really looking into, besides the data collection, to start talking to lots of folks. Some of this will be through phone calls and Zoom meetings and team meetings, but I do want to schedule some time, about 2 weeks from today, to spend a day or two in your community and have some in-person one-on-one meetings. So we'll talk a little bit about your opinions and folks you think I should be speaking with as well. The deliverable, or the key deliverable, is to, this is like taking a temperature, right? We want to create a fact book that really freezes in time where things are in terms of your current land use, all the relevant studies, existing services and infrastructure, key areas of focus, all of the pieces of the puzzle that start to create the guide rails as to why we would design a land use plan update in a particular direction. So these sort of guiding points, these guardrails are really helping to frame the context and the issues that we're responding to when we start to draft and hopefully finalize a land use plan update. Stage two, which I'll show you a schedule in a minute, but we've been working through that, and we're going to be to a point where we're delivering stage one in mid-March, so then we can start to move into stage two. And that's really to start to identify and develop some future scenarios. We're going to talk about different land use development schemes with the data that's either quantitative or qualitative that we've been able to collect, and certainly be thinking about the availability of infrastructure and services to support those scenarios. So to say we would have a certain land use type or density in one location, yet we have roadways that are not concurrent, infrastructure that's not available or up to snuff, public emergency services and public resources that aren't there, lacking of parks, all of these things would start to not work favorably on particular land use, or perhaps the other way around. We want to focus development around a certain interchange or neighborhood or development or whatever that might be. We'll start to test those development scenarios again in a qualitative and a quantitative way, and review those with the city, review those with folks here on this call, and from that say, of all of those kind of focus areas that we've looked at in those future development scenarios, we think that this particular preferred development approach makes the most sense in the near term, mid-term, potentially the long term. And we'll start to then focus on a preferred direction in those key focus areas as part of the overall plan. And with that, we'll be able to then advance into the final aspects of the planning process, right? Doing all the appropriate GIS mapping, making sure we're meeting with the NC statute associated with your plan update, coming up with summary presentations, and ultimately get this before the members here of the PZB, as well as ultimately the aldermen and folks to, by June, ideally, to get this adopted to meet the state requirements. Now, in this abbreviated process, ideally, we would all love to have a budget that's 5 times as big and time that's 5 times as long, right? This is a type of a planning process to be a very deep conversation with the community, and ultimately we would prefer to have that, and we would prefer to be able to do this over a year, maybe even a year and a half worth of time. Unfortunately, we don't have it. We need to meet the state requirement. We need to really work in a very efficient, focused manner. And while it might not be ideal, that's kind of the hand that we've been dealt. And the goal then, once we get what we feel is, at the moment, the very best that we can do and the best plan that we can get in front of the alderman for adoption, we then would expect that once we can get that and through that crossroads, that hurdle, we can start to then work to, by adjustment and amendment, post-June adoption, start to finesse and tailor things. Perhaps we didn't resolve, that we're not as comfortable with, things that perhaps left a little bit, a room that maybe we don't want to have out there in the land use plan. And so, in speaking with the planning team and others, that will really be our goal post-June adoption, to then identify things that are still homework items and tasks that we need to do to get things done. But with the time that we have available, we really want to get through our task one and get that deliverable wrapped up about the third week of March. And you can see here the green number one, that's the discussion that we're having this evening. We'd like to have another discussion, perhaps at your very next meeting, the first week of April. If not, we would move it then to the first week of May, so that we could go through some of the things that we learned and some of these preliminary future development scenarios that have been assembled under stage 2, or the big O2 on your left-hand side. The red numbers represent just working with our project management team with the city and with members that I just mentioned, economic development and transportation, engineering, so that they're seeing on almost a monthly basis, having status check as to where we are on all of our deliverables and all the components that are going into the plan. And as you can see, as we get into May, the expectation is that we're now crafting the final land use plan, crafting the mapping and GIS work that goes into all of that, and starting to think about getting it through an adoption process through this board, and ultimately in front of the aldermen and other decision makers in the community. And so that is the schedule moving forward, and we'll certainly return to that throughout this evening just to talk a little bit about it, and as we kind of finesse it a little bit more moving forward. So, data collection. What we have, what we've reviewed so far, what we've been involved in, as you can see here. I won't read all of these, but we really tried to take a good look at all of the things that are available to us. We have all of these documents and plans on file. We're getting more, but we're going through and sort of summarizing all of these, and even things, such as the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes here, the How We Grew document, sort of the prepared monthly update that is available, that talks about the number of single-family homes. I mean, how a boom in multifamily in your community, much like many communities in North Carolina, and to really start to use that qualitative and quantitative data to start to develop that overall snapshot of your community that'll serve as sort of the framework and the roadmap to be able to move forward. So with that, here's where we'll take the pause, and really this becomes the big pause of the evening. As I mentioned, that we have 3 sort of broad questions that we were hoping to talk a little bit about tonight. We could really talk about anything that the board would like to speak about, but very specifically that would help me, things in my team that would really be very useful. Is number 1, just making sure we're talking to the right folks, and making sure that we're having substantive conversations with the people in your community that you feel are critical at this stage to understand and to be able to craft the ultimate draft and final land use plan update. And then to talk a little about the key focus areas of concern. In our kickoff meeting, we heard a lot and learned a lot about the 3 corridors that we have on the screen, MOK, 70, and 43. That a lot of future development, current development, future development is really kind of happening along corridors and the respective interchanges and neighborhoods and districts in and around those areas. Would love to hear more about each one of those as well as others that we haven't heard about, and to be very specific and tactile to the greatest extent possible. And then, of course, the last one, just sort of the overall, what are the other issues and opportunities, things that we need to be thinking about and incorporating into the overall assessment. And those are, those are the three areas I would love to be able to spend some time with this board and the folks that are present on this Zoom call this evening. So, Madam Chairwoman, perhaps I can hand it back over to you to facilitate some of the initial discussion just on point number one. Who should we be talking to in the community? And also, how best should we be approaching and talking to those folks moving forward?
Okay, we have our first charge. Does anybody have any suggestions? Well, my first one would be, I read over who did the 2010 plan to begin with. There's not a lot of people that are left, but Tom Broughton is still here and very active. And I think you probably would want to talk with him.
Okay. And is Tom with the city, or is he a member, just a member of the community?
He's a member of the community. He is a retired Marine general.
Oh, wow, okay. Got it. Okay. Well, what other folks? I listed, the usual suspects, Papa Foster already. We would like to schedule 30-minute one-on-ones with the aldermen just to hear their thoughts and ideas and impressions about, their respective places of concern. The city attorney we have not spoken to yet, and we need to, continue to talk to some of the other staff as well.
Anybody else have suggestions?
Question, and then it'll become a suggestion. The police department, fire department, should they get involved at all? I think that would probably...
With some of the problems we've seen, I think that's important.
Yeah.
We think you need to talk with fire and police.
Okay. All right. So public services, public safety. Okay.
Steve Tyson, because he worked so close with Tom Broughton through all that we went through with the hurricane. They saw a lot in that area.
Our state representative, Steve Tyson, he is our legislative representative in the House.
He worked real close with Tom.
And he and Tom are very, very close and did an awful lot of work, especially after the Florence disaster.
Okay.
The new public works director, he's just coming on board. I think this is a good time to bring Al into the fold. Obviously I know they're talking to... Go ahead.
This is Captain Real Life.
You said light now, okay. Obviously I know you're talking to Foster. We just got a new public works director, so obviously this would be a good time to kind of bring him into the fold. Obviously for the project, but also to get him familiar with the corridors and as he continues to get his feet underneath him. So that would be my suggestion as well.
Perfect. Okay. And is that George, or is that a different? Did George retire and that's a different individual?
George was interim. This is the new hire for Public Works. You're probably also going to want to talk with Park and Rec, and there's an interim director there right now, I believe.
Carrie.
Okay.
And water, sewer.
Yep.
We seem to have some concerns with 70 East Corridor with the water situation. So I think that would be something that needs to be brought into it.
Okay.
I would suggest Hugh Overholt, who's a...
Don, turn your mic.
Good, you're good.
Real Life. There you go. No, it's on.
I would suggest General Hugh Overholt, who is a governor of Division II DOT, He's a resident of our city,
Okay.
and he is involved with converting 70 into Interstate 42.
Right, okay. Great suggestion. Yeah, I did hear about that, and certainly that could be transformative in terms of that change and that link up.
I have a general question. This seems like a
Turn the
condensed,
microphone
I'm not-
You're
this is
on.
just
He needs to hear.
seems to be a tremendously condensed process. How long did we know that this had to be done? And, why did you start in January? It seems to me like it's going to be a lot more than a few months. Just talking to the people we've suggested.
Yes, so, sure. The state set the deadline for July 1st.
I understand the
When did they
deadline.
do it?
When did it start, though? When
Right,
did you
so-
know the deadline was coming?
Right, it was a follow-on requirement to the previous requirement for large overhaul of the ordinances. And so then we were given essentially 1 year from that point to the new deadline. And by the time, I guess, we got the RFQs and things out, and finally negotiations and whatnot, and got someone started, it was January.
Okay.
So, sir, just to kind of close the loop on some of the people that we gave you names, Al Cablay is the new Public Works Director,
Okay.
and the interim over at Parks and Rec is Carrie Green Warren. I
Carrie
couldn't think of her
Green
name here,
Warren.
so I had to look it up.
Okay. Super helpful. Thank you.
Yes,
So
sir.
what about Jason Walker?
Oh, Jordan Hughes.
Yeah, Jordan Hughes, yeah.
Yeah, he's already been marked.
I think we know him.
And we will continue to talk with the economic development folks, with Amanda and any others, because, a lot of your community goals are organized around, obviously, building quality communities, but also having the right number of jobs and the right types of things that are in place that make those businesses successful. And so if there are objectives and things that are happening that are aligned with that, and that can blend into the land use plan update, we'd like to know about those as well. I mean, clearly the work that's happening with Warehouser and some of the other things that are happening are, a big part of that. But I know there's others that are afoot as well.
You may want to talk with the Craven 100 Alliance as well, if you're talking about
Okay.
industrial development.
Okay. Great. Great suggestion.
Make sure you talk to Amanda before Friday.
Uh-oh.
She won't be here on Monday.
All right. Is she having a boy or a girl?
Neither.
Oh, boy.
New job in the Midwest.
Man, seems like that seems to be quite the theme these days. So, okay, well, I will get in touch with her before Friday.
Should we,
I think we have
should we
given,
put together ourselves a committee to follow this?
that's one of the next questions.
Okay.
Are there any other suggestions? Anybody? I think we've given you a pretty good broad list of people to speak with.
My
I
guess
agree.
is that once you start speaking to these people, they will give you more names.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the classic network, right? Yeah, oh, man, thanks for talking to me. Go talk to John and Sue. Absolutely. So, yes, and we'll certainly take great notes and report back to this board and others, some of the things that we learned as part of those discussions. Well, I think with that, I agree, Madam Chairwoman, you gave us and all the members, a great starter list, and certainly a lot of good homework items. Perhaps we can move to point 2, and would love to hear about, as I mentioned, we're really trying to focus on some key geographies, not everything, and really make sure we get those right. And so would love to hear from yourself and from your board members some of those locations that, not just in terms of, looking at it on the map, but when I and my team members come to town in a couple of weeks, that we're very engaged in understanding what's happening on the ground in those locations.
Any comments?
What? Sorry.
Comments?
Well, I would definitely say, I live in Ward 6, so the MLK corridor is, in my opinion, that's really an area where I think business is going to expand out, coming out of Newburn or coming into Newburn, depending on which way you're coming. So I think that's the Board of Aldermen have had multiple talks and are looking at, possibly annexing some of those areas out there in the UTJ, which fall into that corridor. So I think there's a lot of room out there for possible expansion, and I know it's being talked about. So I'm excited to see that on there under point 2.
Okay.
And
And just as a follow-up question, what kinds of things are we seeing along that corridor? Is it mostly the development of new communities and neighborhoods, or is it more business intensive? What are the types of pressures that are agglomerating around MLK and inbound and outbound?
So
corridors?
it's definitely a mixed bag. You've got homes out there, you've got smaller businesses, and it's right now the zoning out there is it's a mixed bag as well. It's R10, R5, C5. So it's a definite mix of different things out there, and there are some businesses, but I think a lot of people do recognize the fact that just for the sheer amount of space that's potentially available, I definitely think we could see some businesses coming in there, more businesses. So that's kind of an exciting area for me. I kind of get geeky about it, but just I live out towards that way. So
sure, no, understood. And my understanding too is there is also a mall property that has gone dark or is sort of limping along. Is that also a focused area along the ML4 corridor?
Yeah, there's a mall area, and we always used to joke around, my friends and I, if you see the Sears die, then the mall's dying. So yeah. And in that particular case, yeah, I think there's some opportunity at the mall there, and then also on Glen Burnie, which is just off of that MLK corridor. We've got pretty much a shopping center that sits 75% unoccupied just because of the Harris Teeter moved across the MLK corridor. So there are some definite opportunities there, and there are some big spaces that are available up and down that corridor, not just coming into the outskirts of Newburn, but in that area right there where we're discussing. So I would love to see some stuff be brought in there and get some people excited about bringing future opportunities in that corridor.
I think also in that vein, getting to the next step, which is the 70 corridor, there's a big disconnect between some of the developments that are on just off of 70 and the city itself. Maybe you'd like to investigate some kind of a nexus that would connect those a little bit more realistically.
Okay.
I also think the 70 East corridor is having explosive residential growth. And I'm not sure that the infrastructure is keeping up with the growth as well as it should.
Absolutely right.
So I think that's an area that really needs to be looked at. And I think the 70 West corridor needs to have industrial and manufacturing type growth looked at.
Okay.
There's the industrial park and things like that they're there, but you're not seeing any new business come into them.
Okay.
One comment on the industrial park, that's Craven County, that's not Newburn.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. There's kind of like a disconnect between the developments and the.
Are you still considering the same area that the 2010 land use covered?
Yeah, to the extent of the city limit, yes, we
Yes,
are.
that's outside the city limit.
But you're including the ETJ, correct?
We are including the ETJ.
That
that's
takes
true.
us with the 3-mile limit of the 3-mile radius of the city
See,
limit.
I would like to see public transportation for the redevelopment zone addressed. We have a lot of people there that I would like to see being able to take public transportation, as many of those people don't have their own vehicles, and we don't have adequate public transportation for them presently.
Okay. Great. And if I could just take a quick step back from my notes. So on the 70 East Corridor, Madam Chairwoman, you mentioned infrastructure. Can you be more specific? What kind of infrastructure? Is it all encompassing, or are there specific types that are, is it roadway capacity or water sewer? What types of
Water
things
sewer.
are left? Water sewer?
And they're also, they're trying their best to get the I-42 corridor built as soon as possible. So we are having an awful lot of construction going on from basically the Cunningham Bridge east. And it's going to be, what, a 2-year disconnect for a lot of the
They said 3
communities,
years, it's been a year
the
into it,
subdivisions
so-
that are on either side of
Yeah.
70. That's something that, it's a short-term thing, but it's still something other. For 2 years, it's going to be a giant aggravation.
Okay. And what about on 43?
43.
Yeah, that was brought up in some of the other discussions. What are the thoughts of that?
That's
particular
warehouse
corridor?
developing all out in there.
Okay. And they've got a lot, 3,000 acres, I think is from my notes. It's a pretty extensive area.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other focus areas or, crossroads that are just areas of, we want to have TND types of a development focus, higher density, more multifamily that is arranged around transit, public services and those types of things, buses and other sort of, park or greenway facilities. Any other, really strategic areas that we can think of?
You have 2 areas in downtown Newburn that are very much underserved communities. And right now, they are being worked on with the redevelopment commission. But I think those communities need to be looked at. In general, very, very typically, they have been promised the moon and gotten nothing. And they're really in need of a lot of help and a lot of guidance.
Okay.
So I would
And
really
do
like to
those-
see Duffy Field and Walt
Duffy
Bellamy
Uh-huh.
really looked at thoroughly.
Okay. Great.
Because when you think about it, a city is only good as the lowest income population places to live. And we're not being very good when you look at where they have to live.
Now, I don't know if this is part of, this is all, right? I don't know if this is part of the work on this committee and the amount of time we have left to do this. With all the building going on of these new subdivisions, which they also bring in water problems on off of 70, on some of the new subdivisions being built. At least we had discussions of that in the past. What about the school districts? Does this have anything to do with this committee for this thing? So, we have enough, we're gonna build a lot of school, new subdivisions. We have enough schools and places and desks and teachers to teach these kids. We're gonna have a private school supposedly in the warehousing,
The West Newburn.
and not everybody can go to private school. So it might have nothing to do with this committee right now, but just throwing that out there.
Mhm.
And one-
Yeah, I mean, I would just on that, you know, it certainly was brought up that the high school is undersized. You know, that there's a new charter school in West Newburn. But, you know, generally or historically, a lot of the school planning has not sort of been wedded with some of the community planning. And so, you know, while we can't do a really deep dive, I think in some of these key focus areas, if they're underserved, if we have families moving into these areas that were underserved by schools or roadways or means to get, you know, people to and from the quality schools that are there, that's got to kind of be part of the conversation.
But
Thank
one
you.
other thing that we've had lately is public access to the waterfront.
Mhm.
The Board of Aldermen were negotiating with a large developer to use part of Union Point Park, which is the main downtown park, to build a new hotel on, which would have taken away waterfront access for the population of Newburn. And I have never seen a city come together so fast in my life to fight that. And I think it's something that we need to look at to make sure that we have a good amount of water access. This is a very water-oriented community.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people that can't afford to live on the waterfront but would like to be able to launch their kayaks or whatever, or even just go feed the ducks.
Yeah, sure.
So I think that's something, I noticed in the 2010 plan, that was one of the concerns, and I think that's a continuing concern.
Okay.
The Lawson Creek got to be better.
Yeah.
That's,
And in that vein, some more, look into areas where people could walk and hike, just because there's some very pretty scenery here that we, right now, don't have access to.
well, all that
Mhm.
way down Trent Court, all that waterway.
Yeah.
Can't get to it. Right up Bushy Street.
Great points. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big waterfront guy. That, you know, as Matt knows, I work with him on the City of Elizabeth City's waterfront master plan, and I'm working in Beaufort right now on their waterfront master plan. So I am all about public access to the water's edge. So
Weren't you involved with Washington too?
all of the work that happened in Little Washington, that is work that I've been involved in as well. So huge advocate of public access, and also these days making the waterfront as safe an edge as you possibly can with some of the stresses and shocks that are happening, whether they're weather or wind or, you know, other things that are happening.
That's a lot of work.
Okay. Well, I think that, I mean, unless others have additional corridors, and, you know, this isn't the end discussion, right? I mean, I'm sure things will come up, or like, oh, I meant to say, so, you know, feel free at any time to, you know, let Matt know, or Seth, or reach out to me directly to say, oh man, I was driving home and I really thought about we should be looking at this location as well, if you could include that in the analysis. And then, you know, board members and Madam Chairwoman, the other kind of catch-all is, you know, what are the other issues and opportunities? I mean, I think we've covered some of that ground, talking about schools, talking about infrastructure availability. You know, are there some other potholes or pots of gold that we need to be thinking about as we start to craft this plan and pull things together?
I think we pretty well covered it, don't you? The one thing that I would say is Newburn's infrastructure is
Need a grant.
not what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
I am from Charlotte, and I will tell you that the roads here are worse than Charlotte, if that's possible.
Uh-oh. But they're getting better every day, though. Yeah. Yeah, that is always a challenge. That is always a
Yeah,
challenge.
especially when you're on shifting sand, too.
Yeah, true. Okay. That's super helpful. So let me put, I just went from share screen and I meant to advance slide, not stop sharing my screen. So let me try that again. Little clicky there. I'm gonna go into this app and click that thing. Just to kind of circle back around where we began in terms of our timeline. Would this board like to get together as a group, or would you like to empower a subcommittee that is meeting with us on a monthly or even perhaps a bi-weekly basis as we move through the course of this project? I'm certainly open to either of those scenarios, and I would love to anchor down maybe the next time that we get together as a group to, whether that's your next meeting or if that's a meeting in May, just so, we're moving and working quickly. I want to make sure that we're having as much conversation about these topics as we possibly can.
Well, I think because of the timeline, someone, either the whole committee or should meet at least bi-weekly. I think we can't let this go by month by month because nothing will get done.
Okay.
Do you want, this is a question for the group, do you want to appoint 3 people to be the committee, or would you like to work on it as a board?
I think we should take volunteers for it.
Can I just say one thing real quick? If we have the whole board, we are gonna have to do notifications for everybody.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It's probably easier to get 3
Just
people
because
who
of
can
the
sit.
time constraints.
And if you're looking for volunteers, I'd be happy to do it.
You'd be fantastic doing it.
Yeah.
Who else would like to volunteer to do it? Travis, anybody else?
You gonna be on it too? So?
Anytime
You-
we have a grant
Chairperson.
for it.
We'll have to
You want
write
the
a grant, but
chairperson be
we'll
on
get
it too,
You can have
chairwoman?
4
Okay.
people, right?
You've got 3,
Anything less
Who's
than
on it?
5.
Great.
And
Sonny, Travis, and Ann.
Okay, that works.
Can anyone else just show up? No.
Well, you can't, be careful, we don't want a quorum.
Less than
That's
5.
right, so we
No,
can only
okay.
have 3.
3 is fine.
Okay.
Your quorum is 4, is 5.
Yeah, so we can get 4.
We could have 4.
Yeah, let's get another person. I mean, look, we
Does
got a lot
anybody
of
else wanna
smart
be on
folks
it?
on the house.
Oh, you gotta go ahead.
I think, no.
You guys scrap it out, tell me who's
Yeah,
going to
you
do
go ahead.
it. Okay, Marcus?
I like it.
Mark,
That's right.
That's perfect. And like I said, I think we should meet at least every other week.
I agree with you.
Okay. So Sunny, Travis, Ann, and Marcus, if that's great, I think this is terrific. If Matt or Madam Chairwoman, if someone can just email me the best contacts for this group, I'll set up the best means for us to communicate, whether it's a Zoom call or something else, and then certainly coordinate a couple of weeks when I'm on the ground. We all get together and maybe look at some of these sites, or at least certainly talk around coffee some of the things that we've learned so far.
Seth and Nadia will be able to do that.
Okay.
That's what I've been doing.
They have all the contacts.
And then meeting sort of bi-weekly, when should I next come before this board, given our timeline? Do we want to get together as me being a part of your agenda at your next board meeting, or would you rather wait until May?
We got 2 in March. Got a special call.
not anymore, that one, they have said that they would just,
One week?
I know what
Yeah,
April, so we
it's
don't
like
have a
April.
special call meeting in March.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I think as I said, we should meet twice a week, and we should coordinate. Probably the best way to coordinate is with Jen,
Okay.
so we know when to show up.
Looking at your timeline,
I thought you had a date come to
I'm
me.
thinking we need to have you come to our next 2 board meetings, April and May.
Okay.
That may change, but I'm just looking at your timeline.
Yep. Certainly, yeah, if I work with Seth to get those dates, I'll certainly see if we can make them both work.
But I think we should meet, if you're gonna have boots on the ground, we need to meet with you then.
Okay?
Well, what I'm thinking, it has to be adopted by July, so you would have to finalize the plan sometime in the middle of June.
That's
at the
right, just to
latest.
get to the Alderman's meeting, right?
Yeah, I think we have to have it finalized by basically the 1st of June to get it on the agenda for the Alderman.
That's right.
I don't
Yeah,
see how you can come
that's right.
so-
At your June meeting, you would
He's gonna be meeting.
recommend it to be adopted at
At the June meeting.
their June POA meeting.
That means that they have to have, sometimes it has to be
Done by-
finalized in May.
Yes. Pretty much.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
So when did he say he was going to be here, boots on the ground? Yeah, I thought he said March, this month.
Yeah. When are you planning to come to Newburn?
I was planning on coming mid-March. I have not set a date, but I will say I'm going to hop out of here. I'm going to stop sharing. I will say that it's most likely that I would be there the week of the 21st, some point, one of the days, the week of the 21st.
Nadia, would you send out his contact information?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So that's 3 weeks. So your committee's going to meet in 2 weeks, which would put it around the week of the 14th, and then meet him the next week?
But I'm not quite sure what the committee is going to be doing until we
Still be
meet
September. Yes.
on the week of the 21st to get some guidance.
Yeah, can I make a suggestion that we kind of start when he's here? I think that's probably a good time to start this discussion, because again, like you just said, we're just sitting around. Go ahead.
Let me ask one question though, Scott. Is there something that the committee could work on the 14th, or the week of the 14th, before your arrival? Or
To help.
And like in terms of a homework assignment or
Yeah.
getting together
Yeah.
virtually?
in terms of the homework assignment? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's not coming to mind immediately, but I think that, following this call and me kind of working on all the notes and minutes, let me craft a couple of to-dos and send those through the lines of communication so that you guys can in fact be helping in that regard. That would be great.
And then the follow-up to that is, were you thinking that you would be virtually attending these committee meetings, or is this, you're thinking the committee's, working on their own, perhaps with some staff support?
So I was thinking on the biweekly with the committee that that would usually be virtually through a conference call, with the exception that this trip on the week of the 21st would want to get together if possible. And then after that, I'll look at the calendar and see if I can be, actually physically present at the next two planning meetings. I have to look at our budget as well, but that'll be the goal.
I know, I'm just going to notify when he's here so you guys can meet with him.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chairwoman and board members, hopefully you all felt this was a productive hour discussion, and that you felt the agenda that I outlined in terms of bringing everybody up to speed of what we're doing and how quickly we got to do it was informative. Looking forward to rolling up. My sleeves are already rolled up, but continue to keep my sleeves rolled up, working with everybody on this assignment. Thank you for designating a working committee. I think that'll certainly be very effective. And we'll go from there. We'll get some of these dates nailed down and be off to the races.
Good. I look forward to it.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Great. Well, nice to meet everybody virtually. I'll look forward to meeting everybody in person. Glad we could get the audio worked out, and hope you all have a good Tuesday night.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Any comments?
It's a very short time, we have to cover a lot of bases now.
Yeah.
Make it practicable.
Well, that's why I suggested at least every 2 weeks. Probably it may work that we'll have to meet more often, but we'll see.
Well, when you consider it took the Board of Aldermen about 3 months to finalize on finding a consultant, and you have 2 months to write it up.
Yeah.
That's a loaded deck you're playing against.
We've got 3 months to get a final product.
No, you have 2 months.
We've got March, April, and May. We have to bring it to the board, our board, the 1st of June. That's going to be a really tall order. I'm assuming we're going to give them bare bones and flesh it out with amendments.
Yes,
As it goes.
that's our intention at this point. I've kind of from day one, as interim, I mentioned to Foster that, well, first of all, whatever we have at the beginning of June, pencils down, and we have to adopt that. And then after it's adopted at the end of June, then we can pick up our pencils again and make revisions that we felt like we were missing. And maybe that even gives us a little bit of time to kind of think things over a little bit. Say, oh man, we've got the airport, or something, right?
Well, that's a huge potential right there that we need to talk about.
No, that's right, and that's an example, right?
Yeah.
There's probably
I heard about the airport, but
after.
the airport is really a county thing, right? I mean, I don't know how much we're gonna get involved with that.
Yeah, but everything around that has to do with
Oh, I
the
know.
city too.
I know.
Well, it's just like, I don't know, I have to go back and look at a map, because I can't think of what part of 43 is city.
Right,
Very little.
That's what I'm thinking.
But we're
Why-
taking in the ETJ as well.
right.
And part of that, a part of 43 is within the ETJ.
It's still 3 miles or something.
So this is, again, off the top of your head kind of thing.
Right, so like you said, you go home
you're
and
gonna
think
come
about
up
this
with-
thing.
You're going to come up with more things, and that's, again, good thing we have the every other week scenario.
I think so. We'll meet formally every 2 weeks, but I think that we'll be doing a lot of talking.
I think the 4 of us need to get together when the meeting is over and talk about our availability to see if we can't find a day and time every 2 weeks that works. And go ahead and get those on our calendars before they fill up more.
So what I also realized is every 2 weeks might run into your same week as your P&Z meeting, whether or not that is an issue for you guys or not, individually, Can't do 2 meetings in 1 week. Or you do it before or after the P&Z meeting.
And that's a possibility. Just get it over with all at one time.
Because you're already here anyway.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments about our task at hand? Okay. Then let's move on to board member comments.
I would like to make a comment. We heard a professional engineer at the last meeting telling us that the side's construction at the Blue Water Rise is not being built compliant to the plats that we approved, and that there are serious problems concerning drainage and whatnot, and it's so problematic there that it may impact our community in the future. And I would like to know if the planning and zoning department, the planning department, development services, can review the complaints that we heard to see if they're justified or not, and if there is a problem with it, how can we make the developer compliant to the plats that we approved? Is there anything that the development services can do to investigate that the construction is being built as per the plats that were submitted? The professional engineer said certain retaining walls weren't being built when they were on the thing, that grading wasn't being done properly, and there are serious issues with land erosion, he told us. Also, we were also told that you haven't approved the city roads yet there because they're not built up to snuff when people are living there now.
a good question. I don't know if they have any, jurisdiction as
Well,
well.
if they're not going to build something up to the plats that we approved, and not being compliant to it, what does the city and the zoning board have to enforce such a thing? We approve one thing and something else is built substandard.
We're working at the minute to, we've met with the chief building inspector here because they also mentioned that the houses were not being built properly. He's reassured us that they are built to the minimum building code of North Carolina, which is what the developer is required to adhere to.
But the developer also, when he lays out a plat and people buy property that is supposed to be built with certain retaining walls and graded a certain way, and it's not being. I'm not talking about a home being built up to North Carolina building code. I'm talking about things that were laid out in the plat that are not being built at all.
I will say I gave that husband and wife my card and asked them to put together a short email of some of their complaints, send it in, help get the ball rolling, which they did not do. I need to call them anyway just to reach back out. What I would like to do is set up a meeting with them, building inspector and George Charles from Public Works, so we can all talk, get all the engineers in the same room, and to see if these are legitimate complaints
That's good.
and how we can address them.
I will tell you one thing, it is in the public radar now,
Absolutely.
very much. We had dinner with another couple a couple of Friday nights ago, and we were just talking about Newburn and growth, and somebody said, "Do you know where Blue Water Rise is?" And I said, "Yes," and I'm getting very familiar with it. And he said, I've forgotten who he told me took him out there and showed him all the problems that were out there. And he said, "I have another friend who's a realtor who will not show anything in Blue Water Rise because of the problems that are out there." If it comes up in a social situation, you know there's something that's not right. And that's concerning.
We also have an issue with the water supply, some kind of loop that's supposed to be done, and they're supposed to be trying to get some easement. While the water situation has improved out there, this ad infinitum delay of getting an easement through, I understand some of the property they're trying to go through is forest property that's under the state ownership.
I do have an update on that. Got an email I'll read to you guys from Jordan. I asked him after the last meeting if he could give me an update on the water loop. So he said, "Seth, quick update on the water loop." This is from February 11th. Bottom water main alignment has been agreed to by the impacted property owners, and we are currently waiting on survey files for this section of the water main alignment. At this point, 90% of the water main design has been completed, and once we have the remaining survey data, the design plans will be complete and the project will be submitted for permitting within 30 days. Our target schedule is to have the project out for bids and a contract issued for the work by the end of the fiscal year, which is July 1.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't we have some more subdivisions within Blue Water Rise coming up for approval?
Yes, they haven't been submitted yet, but yes.
And didn't we
Yes.
say we weren't gonna do that till the water was
I'm
done,
sorry.
but the water has improved from the meeting we last said that.
Yeah.
So it's back, I mean, it's better than it was.
Yeah,
So
it
they
meets-
want
it meets
another
our requirements to
plat.
some extent. But yeah, and here's always the question and the conundrum. Once it's zoned and they meet the ordinances, our hands are tied.
That's it.
And this is going to be developed by Sides Construction again? And we have strong evidence, and when do you think you'll be able to get this board back a report on how the building is compliant to the plans that we approved?
Yeah, it's
Should
a
we
plus.
just go approving more and more of these developments when they're not building them up to snuff? It's going to give this city a black eye.
Well, for the record, we've had one couple come in and tell us that the whole the place is built up stuff.
And from
Certainly-
our
certainly
understanding,
there
he
is
was a licensed
Public
engineer.
malcontent, we understand that.
George Charles has an inspector out there,
Yeah, he does.
most days monitoring the work that is happening
Well, there was,
out there.
well, if there's retaining walls in the plan and are not being built, I don't know, does the inspector need to see an optician?
I'm not sure what this folks are referring to, but the engineering, Public Works has got somebody out there every day. So now we'll get with them and get a report back to you guys if
I
not.
think your suggestion is to get a list from these people, and then we can sit down with people who are supposed to be doing this and find out whether or not it's true.
That's right. We need to get it really ironed out exactly what these things are and then ask
But
the
I
experts.
agree, I agree with Don, we need to be proactive here, we need to find out whether or not this is true. It may not be, you may be right, but
That's why we're
Now,
asking.
I'm not saying they're the best products on the market. Right now, they're one of the only products on the market. So this is real hot.
Well, Seth,
Prices might be exaggerated, but
let's do a suppose. Suppose we find out that things are not quite what they should be. Is there a way for the city to put a moratorium on more building until things are straightened out?
as far as I know, the Board of Aldermen are the only ones that can do a moratorium on construction.
There you go.
Well, we could make,
Dan, you wanna-
this planning
you
board,
weigh in on that?
the zoning board could make a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen to do so and give them a bill of petition of all the problems that are out there.
Is that in our purview to do?
So the duties and the powers of this board are set forth in the North Carolina General Statutes in section 160D and also in the Newburn Code of Ordinances, specifically in section 1528. And those powers and duties are as follows: to prepare, review, maintain a comprehensive plan, which is what you just participated in, to facilitate and coordinate citizen engagement in the planning process, to develop policies and ordinances to carry out things in an efficient manner, to advise the Board of Aldermen concerning the implementation of plans, to exercise any functions that have been delegated to you by the governing board, and to perform any other duties that have been delegated to you by the governing board. In this conversation, if there are citizens who are upset or have complaints about the infrastructure in their communities, there are city entities, specifically Public Works and the Planning Department, that have the expertise and resources to investigate and to remedy those issues.
That's what we're asking for, essentially.
Exactly. So the most efficient way to deal with these issues is to engage the professionals, city engineering, public works, all of those individuals who have the technical expertise to go to the site, evaluate it, look at the documentation that's on file, and make an assessment. If it bears out that the construction is not consistent with the plan, then those individuals who have the expertise can bring that to the fore. And if there's issues with bonding, or if there has to be some type of permit revocation, those city departments can institute those changes. As far as it relates to this board's ability to investigate, to collect evidence, to require testimony, I do not see that within the powers that have been conferred upon this board by the legislature or the Board of Aldermen.
You said that word policy, though, that we can adopt policies. I don't like voting on things in the dark like we were doing on a poor water supply development, a very large development in the middle of a forest. So I would like that investigated myself.
Well, you certainly have the ability, as a part of this board, to go out and gather information. If you'd like to go to Blue Water Rise with the consent of the property owners and look at what's going on, you're welcome to do that. If you want to engage George Childs, who's one of the city engineers, you're welcome to do that. If you want to go speak with Jordan Hughes, you're certainly welcome to do that. But as far as this board, as an entity, as a body, as a public body, having the power to conduct an investigation, I do not see that outlined as one of your statutory or ordinance authorities.
Do we have the power to ask for an investigation to be initiated?
I do not see that in the ordinance or,
I would say that that's part of the policy work, the work that we can have some sort of administrative power over policy. I can't see how you say
about
that.
administrative procedures. You can develop policies to inform administrative procedures. You can't develop policies about how to run the city. That's within the purview of the Board of Aldermen, which is not this entity.
Thank God.
So Seth, getting back to the conversation that you and I had after the last meeting when we were kind of walking out. I think to kind of satisfy, and I think you and I, not going to speak for you, but I'm going to reiterate the conversation. So you and I kind of came to a mutual, I guess, agreement that the easiest way to do this would be to kind of do what you guys are doing now, where you've got your inspectors out there, you're providing a little bit more overwatch than normal. We all know, everybody sitting in here knows that some developers do it better than others. It is what it is. I'm not making an excuse for that particular builder, but I would say that at this point, based on what City Attorney just said, what I don't want to do is I don't want us to overstep our bounds. But I do think that the development services, if you guys, continue to provide overwatch and just ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, and again, invite those folks or other folks that are buying property out there to come to you guys and say, hey, here's the concerns we have. The other thing we talked about was getting that particular alderman that covers that ward, get them involved. That they make the ultimate decision. I mean, I sit, just as she does, every other Tuesday, and those aldermen, that's part of their responsibility to address their constituents. So that's just kind of my take on it. I don't want us to overstep, and I don't want us to be backed in a corner when we don't need to do it. But I think there are appropriate avenues to address these concerns. I mean, am I wrong in saying that? Again, I don't want to back us in a corner.
And I also, just as a point of clarity, I heard the couple that came to the last meeting, and I heard some of the issues that they raised, and I think it's important in this conversation that I think Seth is trying to facilitate is the plans that they're referring to, whether they're referring to the plats that were adopted by the Planning and Zoning Board, or if they're referring to plans that were marketing or advertising in nature that were utilized to induce people to purchase property.
I think that's what they were referring to.
Those are two different things.
Yes.
So if the builder is not compliant with the plats of record, that's one issue with certain enforcement mechanisms.
Right.
If
Which
the
for us is
builder,
just going to show the lot lines.
I'm sorry?
Just is going to show the boundary of the property, the boundary of the road.
It's not
and
going to
the
show any
access.
development.
if
We're not going to have anything
Features.
on our maps related to grading or
if
landscape.
the builder is not building the development consistent with their marketing literature, that has nothing to do with government. And there are entirely different enforcement mechanisms or remedies that may be available to individuals who believe that they are aggrieved. So I think it's,
that's all civil.
But they were talking about the thickness of asphalt. That's not in the marketing plan.
no, it would not, but I will add this. If the city has not accepted those right-of-ways,
Right.
then we have to bear that in mind when we're thinking about the analysis. So be that as it may, I think it's very important for us to all be speaking the same language. That if they're complaining, maybe legitimately so, that the development isn't what they bought,
That's
then
not our problem.
that's not our problem.
Right.
We can't do anything
Right.
about it.
And we need to probably get answers to that question, and that may bear out in the conversation that Seth is trying to facilitate.
Right.
Yeah.
But the roads are basically responsibility of the city and the.
No.
No.
Not
No.
until they've been signed off.
Not until they give the.
That's
until
still
the
part of the
development-
problem.
That's part of the plat though, is that.
Yeah, but it's still private property.
And there's a bond in place that for improvements that need to be made to those streets in the event that they're accepted by the city. So
that's the key.
until the city accepts those streets, the city doesn't have any responsibility in maintaining those streets. And it makes sense because if the development is still being built, there may be patching or improvements that need to be made to those streets before, everything is finished.
Well, what I find troubling about that is a kind of circular logic. When we approve a plat, the plat was presented that these roads would be adopted by the city to become city roads. And if they're never built up to snuff, then you can say, well, if we haven't accepted them yet, that leaves us in a rather dubious position ethically, I would think.
So if I can jump in there, so the developer provides a bond for all of the public infrastructure.
And but if the city doesn't accept it, then it does become public
And,
infrastructure.
1 second. And during the construction process, that's why the inspectors are out there. They are checking to verify the construction as it's being built, because as you can imagine, for example, a street or even a sewer pipe, you can't know how it was built unless you have some verification as it's being built. You can't know by standing on the finished street that it has such and such thickness of top coat, such and such thickness of, the base rock, etc. So the inspectors are out there to verify that as they build it.
The city is giving these properties COs, and from what you're saying, it's very open-ended as well, sir. What you're saying is, once when the city accepts it, then they're going to be on city roads, and if people were buying that property, basically they were going to be on city roads.
Well, and that's still true. So when you buy a house and a development that's still being built, you appreciate that everything that's supposed to be in that community is not finished. And that's the purpose of having the bond in place. So if the street has not been publicly dedicated, that developer is on the hook until those streets are adopted by the city. They bear the liability, which from their perspective is not good for investment purposes. So it's actually very intuitive and logical that you would finish the development as soon as you can. You would complete the streets as soon as you can so that you can release yourself from the liability and the city owns it. So as these phases go on, yes, they're not publicly dedicated streets yet, but in doing your due diligence and purchasing property there, you can look out and see the quality of the street before you purchase the home. So if you want to live in a neighborhood that's under construction, you kind of have to accept these parameters.
And one of the features that we probably all have seen before are the streets that don't have the top coat on them. And people are driving to their homes and all the various subdivisions back there. And then the manhole covers are sticking up an inch or two or something, right? You've seen all those kinds of roads. Well, that will happen until the very end of the construction, because paving that top coat before construction is over leaves those roads up to damage by all the major large trucks that are still being used for the construction. And so that is a typical situation for a new development. Potentially another reason why they do more cul-de-sacs, because then they can finish that one off, because once we have all those houses built on that cul-de-sac, then we can finish that one off. But the major collectors, we'll call them, not arterials, but collector roads, those will probably remain in that condition until the very end.
Well,
Living in a construction zone, that's what happens.
the engineer that complained to us indicated that he believed the roads were built up to the level, because I think he said something to the effect that the curb is established and there's about a 2 to 3 inch slip on the curb, from what I remember him saying. I would have to review the notes.
Yeah, oftentimes it's a 2 inch or so lift from the gutter onto the road for that top coat.
Well, I think at this point, the best thing we can do is let staff do his investigation and
report back to us.
Yeah, and just let us know how it's
At
going.
least by the next meeting.
Yeah, we need to get a list from the couple that came to speak, and then we can cross-check that with Public Works, just to, double check that what they're saying is essentially correct. And
Because this is a multi-phase development that's going to take many, many years, and the idea that people have to wait 7, 8 years to have the road paved in front of
They
them.
can finish all the houses and not make it.
It's not
But you're saying
atypical
okay.
for a development of
but
that
they'll
size
still
to
be there,
take that
and there's
long,
people
though,
who do
unless
living
they
there.
knew that when they
No.
If it's gonna be done,
contracted anything,
phase.
Blue Horse Horizon's been ahead of schedule from the beginning, so it's
Oh,
actually.
it's in high gear,
Mhm.
completely. What was it, they said 20 years and it's gonna finish out more like 10?
Mhm. Yes, so, and if anything, this development will be finished quicker than most of that size, and the plans denote how many
How
lots.
much more is there to develop than Blue Water Rise?
We are not sure yet. There is a section in the back that is just titled Future Development. They haven't given us any indication of what exactly that will entail.
Maybe another 30% or so. It's a pretty big land
It's,
area.
it's pretty big.
Yeah, but still, if it's 70% done, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the case.
Yeah, it's not 70%.
What do you think it is, Margie?
40.
Maybe,
Maybe, right.
maybe
40%.
35, 40.
Look at, Lakewood, I saw theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, this map won't show it, but
Yeah,
what it's got platted.
by the time we're done, we'll be in junk.
And it probably depends on how the housing market holds up.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, yeah. Wait till that bubble bursts and then it's like, oh, your road?
Hush, 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 hush.
Just
And we
a
do maintain, we
clarification
do have
purpose.
for all of the roads that are bonded, we have 120% value of each one of those roads.
I was being sarcastic. I was being facetious.
A clarification.
Thanks a lot, Dan.
Yeah.
I know, right?
It's like, hey, buddy.
Staff, so far, everything that you found is the developer is meeting all of the criteria he's supposed to meet. May not be the greatest, but he's meeting the base criteria.
That's right.
You know, and that's one thing, I know everybody that sits in here, it's very hard for us to swallow that pill, but if they meet the wickets, I don't know how many times I've heard that, hey, they meet the wickets. If they meet the wickets, it's kind of hard to really hold somebody's feet to another type of fire that you're trying to hold them to, because
If
at
they
the
have
end
a
of the
problem
day-
with the construction of the house, they can go to the licensing board for
Right.
construction.
Right.
Go after that. That has nothing to do with us.
Yes.
A question, just to clarify. You have, the city has a bond, right? If and when they're finished and the streets aren't done properly, would the city then accept them and use the bond money to fix it, or will they just not accept the streets?
Once it's done and completed, if the city says, yes, these are built up to snuff, and we will accept the roads. We accept the roads, give them the money back, turn the bond loose.
Okay.
The bond is there in case
But if
something
it's not
falls through.
done up to snuff, then the city would then figure.
Then we take over the construction project on our own
Okay,
and pay for it.
well, that's just the
Well,
clarification. I
and the
understand.
way the bond is calculated, when they get their money back, the roads have to be repaired before they get all their money back.
Yes, no, I
Right,
just,
right.
So for example, if, construction company A builds subdivision and then before the roads are complete, go bankrupt and don't exist anymore,
right.
that bond
That's
is
really,
used.
usually that's what the bond's for. Usually it's not to fix stuff that wasn't done properly, but that's why I asked. Would the city would just insist that everything would be done properly, or they'll just take it over? Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
Is there any other comment?
We just have to approve the minutes for the Boston meeting at some point.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to put forward a motion to approve the minutes as so submitted.
Is there a second?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes pass as written. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I would like to introduce a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.